Hello and welcome to Google Digital Garage. Happy New Year for those of you who are joining us for the first time this year. We are here to talk about how to create eye-catching graphics for your presentations. My name is Anthea. I'm one of the trainers for Google's free skills training program, Google Digital Garage. And I'm not here alone. I'm also joined by Veena, who is our moderator for today's session, who will be in the chat discussing any comments that you leave and also answering any questions that you have. We've got a whistle-stop tour today, so if you do have questions, please do pop that in the chat. Now, just before we start, I just want to call upon a few things just to help us out today. The main thing is if at any point you have any issues with sound or also the video, please do refresh your screen. That generally tends to solve most problems. In addition, if you want to participate in the chat by leaving comments and asking questions, you will need a YouTube account. If you do have one, please sign in now so you can join us in the chat. And if you don't have one, there'll be an opportunity for you to click the button within the chat so you can get an account set up in just a matter of moments and then jump back in so that we can get stuck in and you can ask any questions that you have. Now, this really is about helping you to create presentations that people are going to remember. It's not just about the information that you're leaving there, but it's what you want them to remember once they have left. So how are we going to be doing that today? We're going to start with understanding the impact of great graphics. Why should you even be using them in your presentations and what makes them eye-catching? And then also looking at some top tips to help make your presentations pop. Now, again, if you've got any questions, please do drop them in the chat. And I just want to say a warm welcome to Folake, to this guy or whatever. Thanks for joining us today, and let us know, what kind of presentations do you make, or what are you hoping to get out of today's session? Okay, so the first thing is to understand the impact of great graphics and why, again, it's really important that you consider using graphics in presentations, as there are a lot of people who generally think that because you're communicating information, that presentations just need to be text only, and that really is not the case. Now, when people generally tend to hear information, they're actually only likely to remember about 10% of that. Now, if you add a graphic, that immediately increases that by 55%. So 65% of the information is retained 3 days later simply by adding a graphic. And one of the main reasons for adding graphics is because it creates connection. It helps people to relate to an image or relate an image to a piece of text and recall that from their memory. So let's think about, why, again, you would need to use graphics. Well, think about the world around you. It's filled with symbols, it's filled with graphics and icons that help us understand what it is that we are to do. There are street signs, there are bathroom signs, there are road signs, even cooking instructions and things that are on the products that you purchase. There are signs everywhere, and all of those signs are there to help you. They're supposed to indicate something that you need to be aware of. Images facilitate understanding, and so they also can be useful in terms of helping you to overcome language barriers. When you go to the toilet, you have a rough idea about which one you should be entering. When you are looking at potentially allergies in a restaurant, the symbols that are being used can tell you whether or not this might be vegetarian or might contain nuts, right? So they help to also improve the retention. Because you've seen it, because you've visualized it, because you have a picture of it, you're now in a position where you're able to retain that information. But beyond that, images also help to tell a story. They spark our imagination and they help us to conceptualize even the trickiest of concepts. So today we're going to explore a few tips and rules around creating graphics that excite your audience and also hold their attention. So the main thing to take away from this is really telling a story. Don't just use images simply because they look like they might be a good thing to include. Be really purposeful with the type of image that you're using and how it correlates to the story that you're trying to tell at that moment. Ensure that it's something that's memorable. So if you were to walk away 3 days later, someone is likely to remember it because it really caught their or grabbed their attention. And then, of course, you can use images or graphics to represent difficult concepts. So for those of you who may need to do reports, presentations for sales, for pitching, all of those things where you have a huge amount of information that's complex. You can use visuals to really, tell that story without people having to dive down into the data. So let's look at some top tips for making your presentations pop. Now, the main thing is just to be aware that when you are doing presentations, and I mean, let us know in the chat, why are you using presentations? Is it for work? Is it for your business venture? Is it for personal reasons? What kind of reasons are you currently using presentations for? Each of these will determine how you should be using these particular tips that we're kind of moving forward with now. So fonts are really important. Now, for the most part, if you're generally just giving a presentation and it's for personal reasons, the fonts, etc., the type of font that you use is to a degree relevant. But if you're using it for work or business, then you need to be consistent with the brand for which you are representing. But fonts are generally the first thing that people generally tend to see when they are looking at a design, right? And so to make it easier for them to understand the information as quick as possible, try and limit yourself to 2 fonts. One needs to be a heading, one needs to be body text. At the most 3, so you may have a subheading. But also just make sure that your fonts are easy to read. Generally, the eye tends to find it hard to read complex fonts. And so because of that, it takes longer for the brain to really interpret it. And therefore, some people will just generally switch off. So the key thing here is to think about what would make it easiest to convey information to your audience rather than what fonts do you like best. So you can see on screen, we've got a couple of examples. The one on the left is very clear. It's got a header font and it's also got a body text font, and it's clear what this is all about. Now on the right-hand side, there are a multitude of fonts going on, and it makes it difficult to read because the bold that's being used, the font being used, the size being used is drawing my attention to different places that may not necessarily want to convey the information. So really just keep it simple and decide what font to use. Next, we have the use of colors. So again, try to limit the number of colors that you're using to no more than 3 primary colors. So also try to make your colors complementary. So on the right-hand side, you've got green, you've got blue, you've got, red, and they don't necessarily complement each other. You could potentially use shades. But again, going back to, are you using this for business or for work? Think about your branding. What colors will complement your branding and also the message that you're trying to convey? So they can also contrast with one another. So you can play with lights and also darks as well. So again, thinking about that shading. So you would use certain colors to kind of draw the audience into particular information, key information that you want to convey. And again, just by making sure that your colors are consistent across your presentation, it will help people to expect the colors and therefore not have to use their brain power to try to decipher the information. And therefore they can take the actual key information that you want them to know a lot quicker. So again, changing colors on the second image, you can see it's not really any relevance. What does the blue, the red and the green actually mean? Not much. So unless there is a specific reason for wanting to do that, it's not really worthwhile you using a multitude of colors if they don't serve any particular purpose. Next is looking at hierarchy. So hierarchy and changing sizes of elements can change the meaning. If something is large, that means it's something that you want people to pay attention to. If something is small, it's useful to know, but maybe not key. So if you look at the second image, you can see, can you tell me, for those of you watching in the chat, let me know from the second image that's on the right-hand side, which would you think is the most popular coffee based on this picture? Would it be the cappuccino, the Americano, or the mocha? Now, me personally, I would have absolutely no clue because they are all on the same level. The only thing that differentiates them is the fact that the Americano is in a brown cup, but that's it. right? So sometimes using hierarchy can help you to convey the importance of something without actually having to say it. So you don't have to put number one, number two, and number three. You can simply just change the levels. So on the left-hand side, you can see that we've got Americano, the largest, Cappuccino, second, and Mocha, the smallest. And like I'm just seeing coming up in the chat, yeah, on the right-hand side, all three would be equal. So there's nothing, if you're trying to do a special offer, let's say on Americano, or highlight to your customers that this is the most important or most popular coffee that you sell, this doesn't say, right? So again, when it comes to fonts and text, it's also a good idea to generally follow the rule that headings are the largest, subheadings, and then body text. So again, on the left-hand side, you can see that the size of the font is in comparison to the size of the image and that hierarchy there. And again, you can also use your brightest colors to draw in the attention to most important elements. So think about how you can play with different levels and what message you might want that to convey. So how do you also use visuals to simplify ideas? Now, it's all good being able to do things in terms of speaking, so the audio aspect of it. It's great to be able to say the writing, having a list. So on here, you can see we've got international store locations that indicate a list, right? But there are other ways that you can take data and convey it in a way that helps people to understand complex information in the most simplistic way. So here are a few general rules of thumb for choosing a visual, but remember to keep in mind the usefulness for your particular audience. So bar charts are really good for helping people to use data to make comparisons. So, some people have a hard time comparing area or volume. So pie charts, donut charts, and bubble charts can sometimes be problematic. Maps are brilliant if you're trying to use place-based, right? So where is something located? Time can be visualized in timelines, horizontal line graphs, or flow charts. Diagrams can be like mind maps, and Venn diagrams are great for explaining themes. And then also you can include photos. Human faces are great for eliciting emotions, and photos that kind of help you to show change over time or referencing specific people. So for example, if you were a personal trainer and you wanted to convey what progress looks like, you could show a photo of someone before they started working with you and a photo after. And then that gives people a very clear indication about what progress looks like over time. So you don't want your audience to be sitting there wondering. And that's why this visual on screen is absolutely brilliant. It shows a map of the world. So for those who may not know where USA, Brazil, and Nigeria are, the pins on there may help to indicate that. And you could potentially have some text underneath each of those to help people understand each of them. And then lastly, we have inclusivity. Think about accessibility. Can everyone access your presentation? So one way to consider your accessibility and inclusivity is the use of colors. Color vision deficiency is the best way to describe someone who has difficulty seeing color. And while each person might experience this differently, there are a few things that you can do to ensure that everyone can understand your graphics. So if you look at the example on the screen, it's clear which title is easier to read. So using a strong color, contrasts, and bold fonts is a great way to ensure that your text is legible. In the second example, let's imagine we're trying to illustrate that a message is sent, delivered, and read. Let us know, which of these designs do you think would be more accessible to someone with CVD? If you thought the first one, then you're probably correct. And it's mostly because with the second one, there is no clear color distinction that makes it obvious between sent and delivered. Okay, so again, think also about font size. Remember to use big fonts wherever possible. You don't want people straining to see the text that you have. And not only do people have varying eyesight strengths, but the people in the back may also have trouble seeing smaller fonts. So now it's time for you to really think about your own presentation. What can you take away from today that's going to just give that extra oomph to your presentations? If you've already designed one, you don't need to scrap it. Just think about how you can introduce some of these things like visuals, font sizes, and more consistency to make sure that you don't distract your audience with the design and help them take in the information that you want to convey. So over to you again. How are you going to make your graphics stand out in your next presentation? Let us know. Good luck and all the best with that. And thank you so much for joining us today. We have other webinars taking place, longer ones that talk about how to build engaging presentations. So please do feel free to visit our website and you'll be able to sign up to another one. So have a great week and thanks again for joining. Take care. Bye.